The Eucharist is this. The Eucharist, we believe, is a foreshadowing of the great banquet of heaven. It is literally practicing our faith. It is literally practicing what we will be doing forever and in eternity, praising and worshiping the Lord on high, singing the great song of the angels and the saints. And so when we go to Eucharist, it is that practice. Now, it doesn't always feel like that practice. The music here is real good, but sometimes you go home, your parish church is like, holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might, is this over yet? Heaven or throwing Lord, was on the high. Sometimes it doesn't really feel like practicing heaven on earth. It is a long way from heaven, but it is indeed that reality. Let's think about it a little bit. Just getting up and going to church. Suffering. I've got to do it. Sometimes it feels really good. Sometimes even for we religious types. Sometimes even for those very committed to faith. Your body doesn't want to get going. What's more significant is not just sort of the physical reality of getting to the Eucharist. It's what starts happening to us from there. You see, the rest of the week, and even when we were kind of introducing each other tonight before we began, the first thing we do is we tend to say, hi, my name's Father Dave. Hi, my name's Joe. What do you do? What's your major, Joe? Oh, great. It's chemistry. Father, where are you at? I'm at Cardinal Stritch. I'm at Bono. And we define ourselves by what we do. One of the dying pieces to going to the Eucharist, one of the dying realities about going to a place like even tonight, is that we're asked thinking of ourselves in the terms of the world. We're asked to recall that we're not really defined by what we do, but we are defined as the beloved sons and daughters of God. That's who we are. That's literally who we are. The rest of the time, the rest of the other 6.5 days of the week, we get these habits of defining ourselves by what people say about us. Well, I am what they said about me my freshman year. That time that I ended up at that party and I've been sort of labeled ever since. Or we define ourselves by what other people say about us, about how great we are, or about how not great we are. We define ourselves by the worldly terms. We define ourselves by what our majors are, what our jobs are, by the fact that even tonight, ride a motorcycle, Cardinal Stritch, that's sort of how we define ourselves. We define ourselves by what we own. I have this, I have that, I live here, I'm from here. Part of the suffering and dying of the Eucharist is that when we come to Mass, the first thing we do is we cross that water. We cross that water like the slaves in Egypt crossed into the Promised Land, and we become new people. You know, incense early on in the Eucharist wasn't used to symbolically show our prayers going to heaven. Incense was literally used because some people were queens who held pine cones on high, and other people, you know, were working in the fields, and other people were hammering horseshoes, and they stunk. And the queens had great perfumes on, and they smelled wonderfully. And the people that were working in the shops and in the fields, they stunk. And so incense was a way to cut the air, was a way to neutralize the smell of the place, so that we can begin to think of ourselves as one body. Not as a person with money or without, not as a person with a lot of sin or without a lot of sin, but part of our suffering is letting go of our titles, our tags, all of our different definitions. Think about it. Most of us wear branded something. If we don't have it on now, we'll have it on tomorrow. Some kind of symbol, a Nike, an Adidas, I don't even know how to say some of them, the Ohio State University sweatshirt or something like that. It says, this is what I'm about. I'm Josephina. I am this person. The Eucharist, one of the first things we do also is when we cross the water, is we begin to let go of that identity, and we dip our hands in the water, and we say, this is the most important sign. This outweighs swoosh. This outweighs 3 stripes. This outweighs Ohio State, BG, whatever it is. My suffering is letting go of my definition. and to begin to recall that I am the daughter and son of God, the beloved daughter and son of God. When I die at the end of life, I can't do anything anymore. So I can't define myself by what I do. And people, frankly, aren't going to say much about me after probably 3 or 4 years. They'll probably just sort of stop talking about me. And frankly, I will own nothing. And so we need to start defining ourselves by the fact that we are God's, period, end of the day. And think about it at Mass. And then all the words start calling us back to Him. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. I've gone away from you. Have mercy. I confess, Almighty God, to my brothers and sisters, I've sinned. My own fault, what I've done, what I failed to do. And I ask you, all the angels and saints, to pray for me. And then we hear again from the Master. We hear again from the Lord. And the words start washing over us. Today, was it yesterday? Poor student at school. She had to read the first reading. If any of you went to Mass, it was the great story of the 3 in the fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar, Azrak, Meshach, Abednego. And she showed up 2 minutes before Mass and didn't know how to pronounce them and butchered. But isn't it something? And how many of us remember the readings? But all of a sudden, those holy words start washing over us. Start washing over us. And we start letting go. Start letting go of who we are. So the suffering of Jesus on the way, as they tried to define Him. You're the King of the Jews. The Jews say that I'm the King of the Jews. You're the one. Kill Him. He stood there patiently. The confidence that He was the beloved Son of God. Isn't that a great confidence to carry ourselves with? The Mass goes on. The Mass goes on, and then we start talking. If you haven't fallen asleep during the homily, and then we start talking, and I say, lift up your hearts. And in school, there's a lift up the Lord. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. We're to give thanks and praise. But in reality, we begin, now that we've let go of who we are by classic definitions, we begin to lift our hearts. We've died to ourselves. We've died to those old definitions. And now we begin to experience the great joy of resurrection. We begin to gather around the crucified Lord, and we begin to anticipate and to experience the resurrected Lord as we gather around the altar. We begin to lift up our hearts and we say, Father, O powerful and ever-living God, we do well always and everywhere to give you thanks. Eucharist means, of course, many of you know, to give away thanks. If you're coming to the Eucharist to get information, you're probably going to be disappointed. Father Mike probably has some great homilies, I'm sure. But if you're coming to get information, information is better gotten, if that's the way to say it, on the internet or the library. If you want to hold hard facts about our faith, go get information. The Eucharist isn't about getting information. If you want entertainment, the music is wonderful at St. Thomas. I'm sure it's wonderful. I've heard some of them. Great. But if you want entertained all the time, there's probably places, probably movie theaters, places that are going to ultimately entertain us better. Big concerts, big with lots of lights. That's entertaining. Eucharist means to come and to give away thanks. Literal translation of the word Eucharist. To give away thanks. And so we begin to do that. We give thanks to the Lord our God. It's right to give Him thanks and praise. We begin to gather around the table. It's interesting what we do at the altar too. It's always, I always use the example, like if you come up to your mom when you're a kid and you just say, Mom, give me some Twizzlers. What happens? She says no, right? But if you come up and you say, Mom, you're the best. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. I love you, Mom. Can I go to school extra next week? I know we have a day off, but oh, and by the way, could I please just have a Twizzler? Just a little itty bitty pack. What are you going to say? Sure. I got her. Yeah, I'm sure you are beautiful and you are the best. But And so at the Eucharist too, we say, Father, we tell God again how great He is, all powerful and ever living God. We do always, all things are of your making, all times and seasons obey your laws. You chose to create man in your own image, and we lift up our hearts to God. We ultimately now gather around the altar and say, please help us. Please help us. Send your Spirit upon these gifts and make them holy. Please, just something. Help us out here. Make them holy. We've grown distant from you. We need to be closer to you again. And we ask for that help. And He gives it again and again and again.